Time for a spiritual awakening. Time for a spiritual awakening.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. My name is Reverend Jerry Yaakov, and I'm your host. Today, we're going to be looking at A Course in Miracles, my primary spiritual path, for the content of today's episode. And particularly, we're going to be looking at a workbook lesson in A Course in Miracles. This is workbook lesson 50, and the title of the workbook lesson is I Am Sustained by the Love of God. It's one of my favorite, I think, most powerful lessons in the entire workbook portion of the Course in Miracles. I am sustained by the love of God. Well, just some introductory remarks, and then we'll get into the actual reading of the lesson. I am sustained by the love of God. This makes reference to our source. God created us. We are as God created us. There is a direct link between God's strength and our own protection, our own strength. It's unbroken. There's no separation. We are as God created us eternally. That is an infinite condition, an eternal condition. And there's nothing outside of us that can have any power to protect us or to hurt us. Nothing real can be threatened. This is the synopsis of A Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Who I am as the true self, as the Christ, can never be threatened. God sustains me with God's love. God's love extended as the Christ. I am an expression of God's love as the Christ. I am part of the sonship, which is one with Christ. There's a unity between God, the sonship, and Christ. All is one. We can use identifying labels such as God, sonship, and Christ seemingly as separate identities that are merged together, but that's not really accurate. What God creates is always infinite and omnipresent. So there's no distinction, there's no separation. My false belief in separation, yes, I'm the Christ, yes, I'm a body, yes, I'm a mind, all of these thoughts separate me from the truth. I can't be all of those things in separate states. The truth is that I am forever one with God, inseparable. I am as God created me, and God is the love that sustains me because it is sustaining itself. I am as God created me. God is sustaining itself as love, not the form of love, but the unity of love, the vibration of love, the actual content or essence of who and what each one of us really is in truth. So it's not at the level of form, although we recognize that we see each other in this dimension with five senses at the form level. But we want to remember what's behind us. What is it that is actually generative of who we are in form? Because the form is impermanent. It is transient. But there's something behind us, and it's referred to, of course, in this workbook lesson, that I'm sustained by the love of God. That is permanent. It's invulnerable. It's eternal. And that is my nature. Not as an individualized self. That comes at the level of form, but at the level of the Christ. The Christ is all-inclusive, as it is in heaven. In heaven, there's a unity. There is no separation. God, God's creation of Christ, knowledge and wisdom, light, love, that's all one in heaven. And as in heaven, so below. We want to remember that while we're dreaming a dream in which we think we're a body, separate from other bodies, because that is an egoic state of mind. And we want to awaken from that egoic state of mind. And the way to do that is to turn to the presence of God that generates all, is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. And that created, of course, the Christ. And we are in that likeness and image of God as the Christ. There's no question about it that when you let go of your attachments, as we'll get into in this workbook lesson, worldly attachments, including the body, which you identify and I identify as myself. When we let go of that attachment, we know freedom and we know a sense of security. We are no longer fearful. The suffering ends. This is the nature and the content of my ministry, teaching that we are not a body. We are truthfully the mind of Christ, which in essence is the mind of God. We have a temporary identification with the body, and the body serves us. There's a purpose for it. Because again, what's behind the body needs to be in some evidence while we collectively believe in a state of separation. So I can express through the body a state of love. I can express through the body my learning experiences. It's a great classroom in which I learn my lessons in oneness, in love. I am sustained by the love of God. Here is the answer to every problem that will confront you today, tomorrow, and throughout time. In this world, you believe you are sustained by everything but God. Your faith is placed in the most trivial and insane symbols. And this would be forms of nothingness that you endow with magical powers. Well, these forms, it's listed here, would be such as money, knowing the right people, being liked, prestige, influence. These are all substitutes for the love of God. God knows no hierarchy of influence or knowing the right people. Everybody is one in Christ. So everybody's the right person. All these things, and that would be in quotes, because things don't really exist except ideations in our minds, which we then interpret as identification symbols for who we are. I'm my job. I'm my money. I'm my car, my house. I'm my marital status. I am fill in the blank. But all these things are replacements for the love of God. All these things are cherished to ensure a body identification. They are songs of praise to the ego. Now, the Course isn't telling us to in any way deny the existence of the world or the existence of the body. We're simply not to be attached to it as our ultimate identification. The ultimate identification for us is the presence and the omniscience and the omnipotence of unconditional love as Christ in God's mind. That is immortal and that is eternal. So we have a temporary purpose for the world and the body, but it isn't the ultimate purpose. And we're not to deny it, we're to use it with a different function. The function is to use the body lovingly. Use it with kindness. Express kindness with it. Because what's behind the body is kindness, is loving Christ-like nature. So do not put your faith in the worthless. It will not sustain you. We put our faith in that that is within us, the heaven of God within our minds, not the outer impermanent things. We don't put our faith in that. We give it a function and we use them. Maybe I have a lot of resources, time, talent, treasure. I can use that for good for people. That would be an expression of love. Tithing is a wonderful idea, and I can use my body to write a check, to go onto PayPal. Whatever I do, it's motivated from within. There's something from the inside that then expresses through the impermanence of the outside, but it's a reflection of love, as is forgiveness itself. There are portions of the Course in Miracles that go into great detail of how forgiveness is unnecessary in heaven, because we never condemn people in heaven. We only condemn and have resentments and grievances in the world of bodies and separation. So to undo that, faith in the worthless, which would be grievances and resentments and ideas of separation, we forgive them. We forgive ourselves. Anything that we felt was done against us, we look past it. And we look past it to the inner strength of Christ. It's the truth about the other person. And we look within ourselves and our own minds for the strength that is who we are and what we are. And getting back to the original statement that I quoted from the introduction, nothing real can be threatened. So I can forgive the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, because who and what I am as the Christ within God's mind, nothing real can be threatened. I am invulnerable. Only the love of God will protect you in all circumstances. Well, we've been talking about this. The love of God is invulnerable, unconditional. It's the essence from which I spring every day, every moment, every instant. I am an expression of God's love, and that can never be undone. That which God has created, let no man put asunder. And that means that, our false thoughts and attachments to the worldly powers really are meaningless. They can't in any way put asunder that which God created, which is our true identity. Nothing real can be threatened. And so it says, the love of God will lift you out of every trial, raise you high above all the perceived dangers of the world, and into a climate of perfect peace and safety. It will transport you into a state of mind that nothing can threaten, nothing can disturb, and where nothing can intrude upon the eternal calm of the Son of God. Well, this serenity, this peace, is known as the Christ peace. It's known as the salvific Christ peace. This is what we are: eternal peace, eternal serenity, eternal love. And that goes into infinity. There's no break in it. There's no separation from God and us. There's no gap. There's nothing for us to fill in with stuff. That's part of the problem, is we think there's a gap between us and God. And, some wisdom paths teach, fill that gap with things from the outside, overlooking that the kingdom of heaven fills that so-called gap that doesn't exist, so that there's nothing needed to fill it from the outside. Everything that appears to be on the outside is simply a projection of our own thinking. Projection makes it so, to appear outside. Projection makes perception. But if I don't project from my mind to the outside anything that I put my faith in, then I see things properly. I see them as neutral. I see them as with possibility of being encompassed within God's love. And then they have a reality of pragmatism and usefulness. But they aren't giving me that which I've already received from the inside, in the level of mind, at the level of the soul. Put not your faith in illusions. They will fail you. Put all your faith in the love of God within you, eternal, changeless, and forever unfailing. This is the answer to whatever confronts you today. Through the love of God within you, you can resolve seeming difficulties without effort and ensure confidence. Tell yourself this often today. It's a declaration, it's a decision, it's a choice of release from the belief in false idols. It is your acknowledgement of the truth about yourself. I am the Christ. I am part of and one in the sonship called the Christ, in the mind of an eternal God that's a loving God, and I'm sustained by the love of God forever. That is my nature. That is the giving nature of God. There's nothing to fear. There is only love. And that's the miracle. That's the definition of the miracle. I've declared the truth, and the truth has set me free. Perfect love casts out all fear. So there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be fearful of because nothing real can be threatened. What God creates is invulnerable, is eternal, is immortal, is non-spatial, non-form, pure content, pure essence. On a vibratory basis, it is forever vibrating the vibes of love that sustain the Christ. And the Christ then passes that vibration of love onto everything and everyone via perception, via speech, via behavior. It's all loving. You know, it's said here, this is the answer to every problem that will confront you. You know, put aside your faith in the insane symbols because they're mere symbols, but they're untrue symbols of power outside of us. There's nothing outside of us that can save us. It's only the God within us that can save us, and has already done so. So there's really no work to be done. There's an awakening to the truth that we've already been saved. Let no idle and foolish thoughts enter to disturb the holy mind of the Son of God. Now, we don't want to tolerate mind wandering. You know, being mindful means that we're in control of our thoughts. We don't allow mind wandering. This is the discipline that we're practicing. Being disciplined means that we're holding the reins of the mind, and the horse isn't running away. We're controlling the reins and the horse, just using a metaphor for the mind. An uncontrolled, undisciplined mind holds the reins, but the horse is running wild and in all directions fearfully. It's terrified. And where does the source of that terror come from? Nowhere. It wasn't created by God, and only what God creates is real, and nothing real can be threatened. Only the unreal, which doesn't exist, can terrify the mind, and the horse runs wild in terror. But it's nothing, because it wasn't created by God. We have to understand that we are a creation of God, so we are real. We are the truth as Christ, not in form. Form can be functionally used, but as the content of God's mind, unconditional love, Christedness, agape love. That's who we are at a vibrational level. That's who we are at a thought level. That's who we are, and it's unthreatenable. It is eternal. Let no idle and foolish thoughts enter to disturb the holy mind of the Son of God. Such is the kingdom of heaven. So this is the state of heaven that we are reflecting while we're here in this ideation, this imagined world of separation, which is untrue. It can only be true in the imagination. You can imagine anything, and you can imagine that your power comes from anything outside of yourself. Does that make it true? No. The truth is that the power resides within you because you are as God created you. I am as God created me. And we're made in the likeness image of the one God. So there's one creation. You and I are one. There's a unity, a singularity. So there's no death. There is no hell. It's all imagined. It's a state of anti-God unconditional love that imagines a state of vulnerability, of separation, of being at risk, having resentful grievances, guilt, sin, all the comparisons that we make. All of that really is, I don't believe that there's a devil, but, it can be referred to as Satan. Get thee behind me. These vain imaginings mean nothing. So we'll call them satanic as contrasted with the truth, which is divine. I'm a divine creation of God, in God's likeness and image, as love. I am sustained as the love of God because God sustains me as the love that she created me as. And there's no satanic opposite. That would be a dualistic viewpoint where God in some way could be separated and maybe even diminished in strength by a co-equal but opposite to love force. And it's not possible. There's nothing opposite to love. Love is omnipresent. Love is omniscient. Love is the omnipresence of an omnipresent God. The two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time, bringing it down to a three-dimensional level. So even at the three-dimensional shadow level, we can see that it's impossible for something that's omnipresent to have anything else occupy that space along with it. It can't be done except in vain imaginings. I can make up all kinds of stories about, my vulnerability, about my sinfulness, about my guilt, because I had imagined myself as separate from God. Well, God never thought that to be effectuated or real. So I'm not condemned. I can give up the act of feeling guilty. It never happened. I imagined it. It's a vain imagining that I separated from my Creator. But as the Christ, as the sonship, as the unconditional creation of God itself, nothing sinful and separate could happen. So there's no need to feel guilty. Now, if I go ahead and I believe in that separation, and then believe that in my ego state, again, an imagination, a false identity, the false self, I then go ahead and commit crimes against God. Are they real or are they imagined? Are they the content of a dream? Or do they actually happen in heaven, where only the truth exists? They don't happen in heaven. Only pure love exists in heaven. Only pure wisdom and knowledge. Pure cause. The effects that I have in some way distorted by virtue of my thoughts of being guilty. I stole something. I was bearing false witness against a neighbor. I condemned a neighbor. I withheld my love from a neighbor. I didn't abide by the golden rule. I ate of the tree of good and evil. And I blame my partner. She did it. She convinced me to do it. All of those vain imaginings lead to an illusion of guilt and sinfulness. We can let that go. That is a story that was told by the ego, to convince us that we're no longer truly supported and sustained by the love of God. And so we have to look to ourselves and to our own ego and to all of the, what does it call them out here? Believe you're sustained by everything but God. Your faith is placed in the most trivial and insane symbols, an endless list of nothingness that you endow with magical powers. You're not sustained by that at all. And it's not going to undo your imagined sense of sin and guilt and fear. Only the truth sets you free, that you've never been sinful or guilty because you've never separated from God, which was the imagined first order of sin. That was the first commandment. Bow down only to me. And we feel like we've bowed down to false idols. And God must be angry and vengeful. But it's not true, because there's nothing outside of ourselves except our vain imaginings. And when we imagine something, it doesn't make it true. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Well, we've covered so much in I Am Sustained by the Love of God. It's a beautiful workbook lesson. It puts into context everything that we can then work on in our practice to end the wild imaginings of the ego, of the fear, because none of it was true. We bought it. It was like false news. It was like drinking the Kool-Aid and buying into the big myth that we've separated from God and that we are sinful bodies and guilty. And it's not true. It didn't happen. This is the truth from the crucifixion and the resurrection as an example. The crucifixion showed we are not a body. Jesus proved that. And the resurrection showed that we're spirit, unconditional Christ spirit. And that rose back to the heaven that we've never left. We've only been dreaming of exile. Well, here is the truth, and it set us free. And I'm so grateful and thankful. And we don't have to wait for it. It's already true. It's been eternally true within us forever. So open your heart and open your mind to the truth. Seek the truth through Jesus or the Christ or the Christ consciousness or your idea of a higher power, which is your sustainability by the love of God. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor and a privilege. And I want to thank you and thank my videographer, Candace Adelson, and thank the NECAT Network. And with that, I'll say namaste, shalom, and peace.